So the lighting in here is awful because the weather outside is awful. But this is the only time this week I have to film, so we're just gonna deal with it and hope that I can fix it in editing. If I cannot, sorry. Hey, hi, hello, how you doing? Today I wanted to talk about anti-heroes. Anti-heroes are becoming more and more popular in both literature as well as movies and other storytelling media such as video games. Some of the most beloved heroes in movies and entertainment media are actually anti-heroes, but a lot of people don't know the difference between a hero and an anti-hero, or even for that matter, a villain and an anti-hero. The three of them, while they have a lot in common, still have multiple things that divide them into different categories and separate them from each other. And those things are quite important to know if you are looking to write a solid hero, a solid villain, or a solid anti-hero, if that is what you're going with from the start. What? My POTS is acting up and my watch is like, what the fuck you doing? Why is your heart rate so high? So what is an anti-hero? A main character in a narrative who may lack some conventional heroic qualities and attributes such as idealism, courage, and morality. I found that one of the easiest ways to recognize an anti-hero is that their goal, their ultimate objective, might be good and for the benefit of themselves and other people, but their motivation behind it or their ways of getting to that goal may be questionable. An anti-hero doesn't, like I just said with the definition, have the qualities that we are used to in the hero that will offer up everything that they love for the world that they live in, to save the world that they live in. But at the end of the day, what they want is still objectively good. So what are some examples in movies of well-known anti-heroes? We have Jack Sparrow, Deadpool, Loki from the Marvel Universe, Severus Snape, and Gru from Despicable Me. They all do good deeds, but their motivations behind it are not as heroic or selfless as you would find with your typical hero in a story. And I'm not just talking about like the superheroes, but just your protagonist in general. Usually if they are a common hero, fit like the bill of being a stereotypical hero, their actions are more about other people than they are about themselves. These characters all have a more selfish reason for what they are doing. They do what they do for the betterment of themselves rather than the betterment of other people. What they want and need might come before what others may want and need. And I mean, let's look at, for example, Jack Sparrow. His methods of getting some of the things that he wants. I mean, I can get why some women in the movies slap him across the face. So how does an anti-hero differ from your conventional hero and villain? So let's say we assign the hero the color white and the villain the color black. Your anti-hero will fall square in the middle. They are a morally gray character. Their flaws are more brought to the front than a hero's, but there is still enough time for their good qualities so that they don't feel purely evil like a villain does. A hero does what they do because they have a goal or a dream that is bigger than themselves. They want to help themselves, but more so other people and maybe a society that they care about or the kingdom that they live in if it is a fantasy novel. An anti-hero's goal, while it might also help other people, the group might be smaller, it might be more contained to just them and their friends rather than the whole community that they live in. But if you were to ask them their God-honest motivation, they would say, achieving this would help me. And if it helps other people, okay, sure, cool. Nice bonus, but not my main goal. They wouldn't do what they do if it wasn't for the fact that it helped them personally get what they want. A villain does what they do for purely selfish reasons, purely selfish motivation, knowing that what they do is hurting other people, but really not caring about it. Because their need for their own satisfaction and their own goal to be achieved is much higher than their sense of compassion and empathy and how important they feel it is to also look at the needs of other people. They may still recognize what I'm doing is wrong and what I am doing is hurting other people. And while not every villain may feel bad about that, some do, but that does not change the fact that while they know that what they are doing is morally wrong and hurting other people, they still continue on their path doing what they do, not really keeping in mind or caring too much as to what it is doing to others. Their satisfaction comes before anything else. An anti-hero, to a point. Let's put it like this. An anti-hero will not offer up their own needs for other people unless they are pushed into a corner or they really don't have another choice. Then they might. A hero would do it without thinking twice, if we're going by the stereotypical version of a hero, right? Somebody needs help. They jump in there because of their sense of morality, of right and wrong, because they feel that it is the right thing to do. A villain does neither. To put it simply, a hero, others' needs come before his own. An anti-hero, his needs come before other people, but there is wiggle room. A villain, his needs come before anybody else's, and he is willing to sacrifice other people's wants and needs in order to get to his goal. Now, an anti-hero is not necessarily a bad person, although we may perceive them as being such whilst reading a book. What do I mean by that? A hero is much closer to the ideal version of us, a human being. A hero represents who we wish that we would be or could be in high stress situations, in situations where our well-being as well as other people's are put at the stake. That is why we root for them in the way that we do, because we want to be like them. We want to, if we are one day in a similar situation, be able to act like them. They are the people that when we are in a high stress situation, we'd be like, what would that hero do? If I was a hero, what would I do? You'll never hear anybody say, if I was an anti-hero, what would I do? And there is a very logical reason for that. An anti-hero is much, much closer to the realistic picture of a human being. An anti-hero is much closer to how the average person would react to a traumatic or a stressful situation that they were not prepared for. Anti-heroes tend to confront us with those parts of ourselves that we don't necessarily like, because anti-heroes are much more morally gray. They aren't there to soothe us or to put a blanket over our shoulders and say everything's gonna be okay. That's a hero's job. An anti-hero is going to confront you with those parts of yourself that you wish you could improve, and that is a huge part of writing an anti-hero. Books with anti-heroes are usually much more serious, purely because of the fact that your protagonist, your main character, your narrator is an anti-hero. A hero would try to keep the mood up, keep everyone going. An anti-hero will leave everyone to their own devices. An anti-hero won't care as much when another character cries, whereas a hero would go to them and comfort them. That would then give us a sense of comfort. An anti-hero wouldn't do that and leave us uncomfortable. Their actions are much more selfish. When we are wrapped up in our own problems, our own needs, that is also how we might react if we were in a high stress situation and we don't like having to confront that part of ourselves. Reading about an anti-hero is confronting at times, especially if it is outside of the realm of superhero movies or books. Those movies tend to have a bigger focus on humor and funny scenes to make up for the scenes that rip your heart out. To make up for the fact that the hero is actually an anti-hero and maybe not someone that you should aspire to be. In order to make sure that the movies don't get too serious, humor is often used. The anti-hero has a good knack of humor in order to divert from how serious the movie can get and how dark those characters at times really are. Writing an anti-hero versus a hero changes the way that your book will look, the same way that it changes the way that movies look. So what does an anti-hero look like in your story, and how can it change your story? Number one, an anti-hero is going to be much more selfish than your typical hero. As I said earlier, your anti-hero will have motivations that are more rooted in selfishness, that are more rooted in what they need versus what other people need. Their comfort stands at number one, and what they are trying to achieve is their comfort. And anyone else that is involved with that, so your side characters, your supporting characters who are there to help your main character along their journey, are more burdens to your anti-hero rather than help. With a hero, they look at the rest of their crew and think, so many people are here to support me. I can't believe that all of these people are here to help me with this. An anti-hero will look at their crew and be like,
just leave me alone. You're all holding me back. I don't care about what is going on in your life.
And while that may grow, your anti-hero will always stay an anti-hero. They will never look at their crew and get emotional because thank you for all of the help that you've been giving me. I couldn't have done this without you guys. You will never see an anti-hero do that. Anti-heroes are known to be less compassionate towards the other characters in your book. So when their motivation is brought up somewhere throughout the story, they may say, yeah, I'm doing this for me, without shame. They won't have as much of a problem with admitting that as a hero might. The same goes for their actions. Let's say that another character, one of the side characters, the lovable side character that every single reader secretly has a crush on, and your main character is, as a matter of fact, a hero. A hero will go in and break that character out before they flee. An anti-hero may be much more inclined to say, fuck that, not my problem, I'm getting out of here. But they will usually be able to be swayed by the other side characters. It's usually the one who has a big mouth, who kind of rules the whole operation, besides not being the main character, you know, that one who will be able to tell your main character, we are going back in. You're helping us. And I'm not accepting no for an answer. Then they will usually still do it. Again, if they are pushed into a corner, they might perform some of the same deeds that a hero would, but they would never do it from the goodness of their own heart. Their heart beats for them, not for other people. And even if they do something good for others from the goodness of their own heart, you will rarely see them actually admit to doing that. Kind of like Crowley from Good Omens. He's a good anti-hero. So is a Seraphon, now that I think about it. I'm obsessed with that show, right? Their backstory will also be much more tragic, and they will be affected much more by their past, as well as in different ways. A hero takes their past and uses it as motivation to make a change, to get through the story and make sure that what is happening to them does not happen to any more other people. They use it as their motivation to do something positive. Your anti-hero looks at their past. It's probably 10 times darker than what your hero's is, and says, I will do anything to avoid that from happening again. But doesn't act on that the same way that a hero would. Your anti-hero is most likely going to isolate, most likely going to avoid any situations that have anything to do with their past or reminds them of it or anything of the sort. They may struggle much more with their past and have it affect them negatively than a hero's would. Your anti-hero is more prone to showing signs of depression, anxiety, or even something like PTSD, because many of the traits that a classic anti-hero will show, such as isolating themselves, pushing people away, avoidance, not wanting to think back to certain memories, pushing their trauma onto other people, are all signs of things like anxiety, PTSD, and so on and so forth. Any trauma-related disorder. You could see the anti-hero as the hero before they went to therapy. Your hero is going to be much more stuck in their trauma response, whether that be fight, flight, fawn, freeze, or flop. Yes, flop is an actual trauma response, just a lot of people don't know about it. And they will act not like this trauma response is something that they are running from, but oftentimes they're more so running towards it and viewing it as their ticket to living the best life that they can. They don't necessarily have the idea of living a good, stable, happy life. Which is what brings me to my next point. Your anti-hero will have a much more negative outlook on life and on the world than your typical hero. Heroes are filled with hope. Their hope is what drives them forward. Anti-heroes are often driven by desperation or fear. And like I just said, they are much more stuck in their past, in their trauma and their trauma responses than a typical hero. Meaning that when they look around, they will not see the same beauty and happiness that a hero would. They don't get caught up in those small moments that might bring a hero joy. Those sweet scenes in books and movies where the hero is laying in the grass and looking up at the stars with one of the side characters just relaxing and giving us that feeling of there's still hope will not happen with an anti-hero. Or at least they will not happen as quickly. And they probably will not happen if the anti-hero is completely sober. If those kind of things happen, your anti-hero is most likely drunk or high out of his mind. Because that allows your walls to go down. As long as our walls are completely up, which, especially at the beginning of the story, your anti-hero's walls will be up. They will not look for those happy, funny moments in everyday life that could bring them joy and happiness. That does not happen. They look at the world and see pain. They look at the world and are constantly reminded, even subconsciously, about what they went through and why this and that are horrible aspects of this world, and why striving for a good life, going after your dreams, at creating the life for yourself that you want and deserve is a horrible idea. They take enough with the bare minimum, and when they are offered more, they get scared and hide, which is going to massively impact their interactions with the side characters, the way that the world is described to the reader, because it is told from someone's point of view who looks at the world and sees nothing but sadness and hate and fear and anger. They are also incredibly self-destructive. As I said, an anti-hero usually takes enough with the bare minimum. They're alive, they have food, they have a place to sleep, they have money in their pocket, and they usually don't go look for anything else. They have what they need in order to survive, not sleep on the street, and have a full stomach, and they take enough with that. Their wants and the things that really get them going in life, they usually don't go after. Or when they do it in a very destructive way, again, driven by trauma responses. Again, your anti-hero has a lot of trauma that they don't deal with well. That's the number one thing about an anti-hero. They have trauma and they don't know how to deal with it in a healthy manner. Now, there are many ways to self-destruct, and that is not just caused by some major disorder. Your character does not have to have PTSD in order to self-destruct. Anxiety can cause you to self-destruct, which over half the world has anxiety. Something like depression causes you to self-destruct. Self-destructive behavior is anything that you do that is not in favor of your own best interest, whether it be knowingly or unknowingly, that in the long run will hurt you. And these behaviors usually come from a need to survive, but not having any of the right tools in order to do so. So for example, somebody who has agoraphobia, they are afraid of going outside. Their destructive behavior as a result might be to avoid going outside. They don't get enough vitamin D, they don't get any social interaction, and their fear in turn grows. You push somebody away because they now exhibit similar traits to an old abuser, and that's just their sense of humor that maybe wasn't even an issue with that abuser, just it's similar. Or they dyed their hair a similar color and now they look a lot more like the abuser, and in turn they pushed the person away while they did nothing wrong. That's self-destructive because now you're isolating. You're isolating because you're scared of what you're seeing. That's self-destructive behavior. Not letting anybody in, even though you know that they have good intentions, is also self-destructive behavior. Not giving yourself any nice things, even though you know that you deserve them, is also self-destructive behavior, because you are telling yourself that nothing will ever be good enough for you to earn some kind of reward. You always have to do better, and that in turn is self-destructive. Anything that you do to yourself that is not in your own good is considered self-destructive. And again, these behaviors often, again, come from trauma, which your anti-hero is going to have enough of. And last but not least, they are not loved, usually, by their community. Their social circle is going to be small, and they will likely surround themselves with people who are very like-minded. They want to stay in the bubble that they are now because that is where they are comfortable. That is where they have found what they perceive to be the closest thing that they can get to some form of peace in their life, some form of contentness. And so they are going to attract people who think very similarly to them. But because those thought processes and so on and so forth are caused by trauma, there won't be a lot of people. On top of that, your anti-hero is often going to be bitter and going to want to isolate as a result of like that bitterness. They may not want other people who are happy and cheery because it reminds your anti-hero of what they don't have or perceive as never being able to have. So they will push most of their community away. There's most likely going to be that one happy-go-lucky character that just kind of won't leave your anti-hero alone, and that character is often going to be very exponential, have a very big role in how your anti-hero changes over time. And there is something about that specific character that your anti-hero will be like, okay, I'll let them a little bit closer than the others, but still at a respectable distance. But they often don't have any close friends that they would absolutely go to bat for. They won't have any friends that they're like, I would give my life for this guy. If anything happened to that person, I'm gonna go absolutely nuts. And even if they have someone like that, it's usually going to be one person, and they will never tell that person that. So that is how you recognize an anti-hero. The difference between a hero and an anti-hero, when you have never really paid attention to it or written an anti-hero, can be hard to figure out because they still share many of the same traits. But once you have written an anti-hero or look out for those traits in popular movies, such as the Jack Sparrow movies, it will be much easier to recognize the difference between an anti-hero, a hero, a villain, and it will be much easier to write them in your own books. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I will be posting another video next Saturday. So if you are interested in that, also hit the bell button so you know when I upload, and then I will see you next week. Bye bye.